I've been told today that I look a little bit like a magician's assistant. So I'm going to do some magic, and the magic that we're going to do right now is I'm going to make every empty seat in the room disappear, because there's a ton of people standing in the back, and abracadabra. So if there's an open seat beside you, please move over. Let folks know. A lot of folks in the back, please come take a seat, please. I know it's fun standing in the back, but there's 4 open seats right here at the front. If anyone wants to grab those. I'm not a very good magician. Hopefully I'm better about talking about search. Appreciate Shingy for starting the Antipodean accent train early, so you're all hopefully well tuned to the Down Under accent. I'm not from Australia, I'm from New Zealand though, so a little further south. And when I was a kid, I played a lot of chess. I was a giant nerd, still am. And the thing about chess that's so interesting is there are so many permutations, right? There are so many different ways the game can be played. And my idol back then, I had 2 idols. The first one was Peter Schmeichel, who was the goalkeeper of Manchester United. And the second one was Garry Kasparov, which, again, I think it was setting up for this life that I've led, knowing that Garry Kasparov was someone that I idolized. And in 1997, you may recall that he played a computer. He played Deep Blue, and he lost. And this was a moment where I was like, how could Garry Kasparov lose to a computer? How brilliant is this computer? This is mind-boggling. Because at the time, I was using a computer for like Microsoft Word. I'm like, did the Word beat him? How did this work? But in chess, there are about 10 to the power of 120 permutations. That's a crazy big number. But it is a number. It's a finite number. And what's interesting about Deep Blue is that it didn't teach itself. Deep Blue was taught by a bunch of grandmasters. So it was really just a group of grandmasters who beat another one. And then, fast forward 20 years, something happened called AlphaGo. AlphaGo was from the Google DeepMind team. And Go is a game, if you've never heard of it, that kind of makes chess look like a kid's game. It is so complicated. This game has been around for 2,000 years. Literally, if you try and put the number of permutations into a calculator, it says not a number. You're like, it has to be. How big? How many permutations? It is unfathomable how large this is. And what they thought they could do is they could have a computer learn how to play Go, this incredibly complicated game, and take on the world champion, this guy Lee Sedol. It was pretty tense. AlphaGo did win the first game, but then Lee started to come back. And then something kind of strange happened. Something really, really unexpected. And it was called Move 37.
That's a very surprising move.
I thought it was a mistake.
When I see this move, for me it's just the big shock. What? Normally human will never play this one because it's bad. It's just bad. We don't know why. It's bad.
But it's a little bit high.
Yeah.
It's 5th line. Normally you don't make a shoulder hit on the 5th line.
So coming on top of a 4th line stone is really unusual.
Yeah, that's an exciting move. Mm-hmm. I think we've seen an original move here. That's the kind of move that you play Go for.
Hey.
Interesting stuff.
This 5th line shoulder hit was
I wasn't expecting that. I don't really know if it's a good or bad move at this point.
That was move 37, and it turned out it was a brilliant move. Thing is, it wasn't a move that any human would make. It wasn't a move that any human would make. It's kind of like if you see a field goal kicker just standing there on the field and the goalposts are over there and they line up this way and you're like, whoa, why are you? And it turns out the wind is going that way. So it's a brilliant position apparently. But that was what was happening here. We didn't understand it because we learned a certain way. And this moment changed the game of Go and AI forever. As humans, we seek patterns. We learn something, and the way we learn it forces this bias as to how we make decisions about something. And so when you think about problem solving here, Go learned it a different way. It did not have the biases that we have. But this is a game that's built on vibes and understanding how we operate. And I think this is a really interesting moment to go into the agentic era, or to the AI era with, is this understanding that, damn, these things have learned differently from us. They have a lot of power. These are the elephants. So right now, we're on the precipice of welcoming our generative engines, the rise of the generative engines. So what are the generative engines? Right now, the way that we search is changing. I'm sure you're all experiencing this shift both in your professional and in your personal lives. But AI search or discovery isn't just on a single surface. It's a new method of interaction. The way that we think about generative engines, they're really static by nature, right? It's different from how we actually go about discovering and having conversations. We really discover through interrogating a subject. We ask these follow-up questions for clarity. We change tack based on new information as it comes to light. That's not really how search works, right? It's really this idea of like, I searched for a word and now I can click something. Generative engines, as we see them right now, are this bridge to the future, one that is very closely aligned with how we've searched traditionally, but it's not quite the full AI experience, right? It's not quite this truly conversational one. And the future is one where we will be having these conversations with AI companions. For now, though, the most notable change, of course, is that we have seen AI overviews. So AI overviews, they're in a lot of places, and I'll talk about why there's some challenges in a moment. And for what it's worth, for all the conversation around ChatGPT, which is important, Google still has more than 400 times the daily query volume of ChatGPT, right? That is the most influential space for your brand. It's something that we should be very mindful of. But these generative responses do have the ability to fundamentally redefine what that search experience looks like. And now we're seeing things like AI mode come to light. The interesting thing, though, is that these aren't universally distributed. AI overviews aren't across every category. They are penetrating certain categories more than others. And I think as we see this over time, the way that consumers are shifting from a navigational search to a discovery-oriented search is going to influence how frequently we see these. So historically, when we've been seeking out a blue link, we're now moving toward this idea of seeking out how we can be informed and how we can be guided on that journey. But it's not just where these are appearing. They are actually changing the way we search. So the way we search is now getting longer. This is some data from Microsoft that we received, where they were looking at query length. So it's no longer just yoga pants, because who just walks into a room and goes, yoga pants? No, you're like, I would like some yoga pants that are sweat wicking and they look good, right? Like there's all this context that we store with it. And I think historically, we didn't really allow search engines to do that because they weren't that great, right? I mean, Ask Jeeves tried it, but RIP. But this doesn't manifest itself just in those overly verbose sentences. It is that additional context that comes through. Not only are we changing the way we search, but we're searching more than ever, which is crazy. 5 trillion is a giant number. By the way, a Google is a number. That's what they named it after. Originally, the name of Google, by the way, was Backrub, which is bizarre, but a Google is a real thing. This is still 1 to the power of 87. That's how many zeros there are. That is how big 5 trillion out of 1 Google is. It's not even scratching the surface, but it is growing rapidly. This is also how we are searching. We're changing the ways that we are going from semantic inputs toward visual search. So AI solutions have evolved. Computer vision has also come along for the ride. So just last week, I took a photo of a little table bracket that I had on some furniture to find out which piece of furniture it belonged to, which is useful. There's a from to there, but that's pretty basic. So the way that we've thought about computer vision is now shifting away from what is this to tell me more about this. This inspires me. I want to find new content related to this thing. This is a query here about books. This is the convergence of multimodal search happening in real time. Now that it is that simple and easy, it is coming for a lot of things. I always use the My Mother test. My mother was doing this kind of stuff, and I'm like, okay, I think this is going mainstream. This is a really incredible moment for us. Also, social. We're going beyond the SERP. This is something I think you're all very aware of, but nearly a quarter of the population use social platforms as their primary platform for online search. Reddit, TikTok, Meta. These are the ones at the forefront of search because we're seeking human connection at the moment. We're seeking human influence. This is real guidance, and often in the form of videos, but as you know, it's nothing new. Search, though, is now incredibly fragmented. It's fragmented in the way we do it, fragmented across generational lines. Those shifts are all very real. Even though this is happening, right, the traditional search ecosystems still do rule the roost. But they do have a problem. And I'm going to talk about the problem with LLMs today, because I love this stuff. But I think if you love something, you're just going to be aware of how much you can hate it, how wrong it can be. So where did all the clicks go? This is what's happening right now. Clicks are dropping off. You may have seen this yourselves. It used to be that the best place to hide a dead body was page 2 of Google. Now it's probably page 1 in the #1 spot because there's an AI overview ahead of that and some ads. Good luck finding that first organic result. This is happening across the board. The reality of how we've thought about this historically is not going to work into the future. Some analysts are predicting we may see a 20 to 60% decline just in the next 2 years within this ecosystem. Why is this happening? Well, zero-click searches. And this is not a new construct either. It's not a new problem. It's, in fact, I started doing SEO when I was 10, which sounds ridiculous, like a child labor situation. It wasn't like that. I was, like I said, a giant nerd. I started making websites, and I figured out SEO back then. I feel like even back then, folks like SEO is dead. It wasn't dead. It was just evolving, right? This whole ecosystem has always been evolving. But there has been a major shift with AI overviews and how they are influencing the nature of zero-click searches. Right now, only 36% of queries result in a click to the open web. That number is diminishing all the time, and it's something that we really have to look at and take very seriously. Now, the problem with the LLMs. What is the problem with the LLMs? Well, that's what keeps me up at night, frankly. Some of the conversations that I've been having with folks, with leaders in the space, envision this world without websites. And it kind of hurts your head when you go, what is an internet without websites? Is it even an internet at that point? It could be. I think to presume that we have created the ultimate form of the internet is quite arrogant, honestly. The internet is still so new. It's, the construction of what web pages were. If you go back 30 years and you say, this is what it looks like, they're like, that looks nothing like the internet we thought it would be. So what is the future of the internet? Is it one that's going to be constrained by these LLM monoliths that have fed information about your brand, and we become serfs ultimately in that era? I don't think so. But LLMs too have a problem. And that problem is well documented. They are what is known as stochastic parrots. Stochastic parrots, though they are able to generate plausible language, actually don't understand the language they're processing, right? The nature of the stochastic parrot is one where they lack intention, they lack comprehension. They just predict the word sequences based on probability distributions. Everything comes back to statistics, which I love because I love stats, but I know it's always a very dry way to look at the subject. The thing about language, though, is it's full of these indirect messages. We create a lot of difficulty for foreign speakers, but even native speakers in understanding what are you actually saying. And when you predict things, it can start to get a little bad, honestly. You see things like this: smoking while pregnant. Which doctor is recommending that? That is crazy. There are some trolls on Reddit that are recommending that, though, right? Or there's someone out there going, wouldn't it be crazy if they recommended this? Well, gets enough upvotes, the LLM is then prone to misinformation. It's prone to providing. This is a real AI overview response, by the way. And the internet has a sarcasm problem. In fact, the English language in a written form has a sarcasm problem. The fact that we have no tonal signal for this is sarcastic when we write a /s, that is a problem with how information is being processed. This is what they switched it to. This is not an AI overview. This is a featured snippet. Because they realized we're going to hallucinate this. There's too much misinformation out there. We have to actually artificially control this. This is a manual override. And there's this inherent tension with an AI of, well, what makes it great? Its ability to be creative, be brilliant, be exciting, is also coupled with its ability to lie, to misstate information, and frankly, hallucinate. So this is a tense situation because you can't remove the hallucination without removing the creativity. But these are the edge cases, right? The nature of these, and why I share them, is because this is an incredible moment of information synthesis. And while it can be funny to poke at the absurdity of some of these things, like you should eat rocks, or backpacks are as good as parachutes, that's a real one out there too. The real value is here, and we cannot afford to dismiss this moment as a novelty. I think we've gone beyond the point of novelty. Even though some of these are wrong, we always point to these as the scapegoats, even though a lot of folks are using these, and these are real signals for consumers. In fact, AI now has an opinion about your brand, which is incredible. Imagine if that was your brand right there, and it said, you've got a bad reputation. Ooh. Have you heard of? No, I was going to go on a full Taylor Swift thing. This is from a thing I'm working on called the Tortured Search Department. We'll see. I might tour the country. But it's interesting that Perplexity does have an opinion about your brand. So soon these will become zero-click searches too. In fact, you may have seen yesterday, PayPal and Perplexity just announced this deal that they're working on where they will have integrated agentic commerce. They'll be transacting within that environment. That changes the game. When we talk about an internet without websites, that's what it looks like, because you're transacting with an agent. So as we think about agentic commerce, this is going faster than we thought. This was one of our big bets from last year. And I honestly thought when I put it in there, I was like, that's a bit wild, Simon. Like, there's no way that's actually going to happen. Lo and behold, I'm now reading it going, God, what an overly conservative take you had. And I think we should have been more bullish on this. This is an incredible moment in how we transact is changing. And critically, how we think about the influence of LLMs is changing. So let's talk about influencing the LLMs. How should we think about marketing to robots? By the way, have you seen the video where there's two AI companions and they're talking to each other and they're like, hey, are we both AI companions? Yes, we are. Should we switch to our native tongue? And it just goes beep, boop, boop, boop. And you're like, this is Star Wars. I'm literally living in Star Wars right now. Who's the Empire? I don't know. But with that, the way that we think about influencing these agentic overlords is really important. And I think it begins with how we think about measurement. If we think about rankings and clicks, because what we're trying to influence, that's always going to decay, no matter what you do. So in order to understand how to drive these meaningful outcomes, we've got to calibrate the measurement expectations that we have. So right now, rankings and clicks, right? But the future, and the reason why we use them, they're clear, easy, deterministic signals. But the future is one where we're not thinking about increasing our organic ranking from 3 to 1, because, great, you get an extra 30% click volume. But it's an era where we're pursuing that influence and sentiment. To paraphrase Drew Carey, he definitely didn't say this, but to paraphrase him, welcome to SEO, where the rankings are made up and the clicks don't matter. That's sort of the future that we are looking at. So there's a world in which, right now, sentiment doesn't matter in these rankings, where we are asking a user to take action, to go and find their information. But that's not what the future looks like, and we rely on this idea of convincing and converting them once they land on our website. Well, what if they never come to the website? What about a world where you must interact via an agent? It's kind of like having a friend who's like, I'm going to go, or like having a lawyer, like, I'm going to go argue this on your behalf. You're like, God, I hope you've got all the information correct, because if you don't, you're going to have a bad argument, a malformed argument, right? I need you to make the case for my brand. So this is what the future looks like. You're going to have an appointed AI agent. But guess what? It's not just your lawyer. It's also the lawyer for the other team. This is your agentic proxy. This is how we should think about our levels of influence, not about rankings and clicks, but about what is the agent saying about you. Right now, this is what's going to be critical to winning the hearts and minds of users. One that is calibrated not just by you, but by your competitors, the influencers, the reviewers, frankly, the wisdom of the crowd. This is AI SEO. It's how we're thinking about the future. So if we want to think about the future and influencing these machines, we've got to know how they work, right? Not just how do we measure, but how do these things actually work? Well, and this is going to get, so stay with me, this is intense stuff. Akin to traditional search, these generative engines index content that's stored in a vector database. The content is then stored in a way that can be called upon when a question is asked. Kind of like our brains. When my wife says, hey, how was your day? I don't go, the Dodgers lost, and I'm like, no, I tell her about the day, because the context there is, that happened to me. Like, there's something important, but that's not how I start the conversation. That's not how I lead into it. So this is how we think about relevant information retrieval. A response is generated, a confidence score is then calculated, and then the difference, and this is the difference between assuming and knowing, right? The degree of confidence they have. So that's the logical inference. I'm sharing this because these systems are very, very complicated. And while we, it may look like traditional search on the surface, under the waterline, it's completely redesigned. It's a completely different experience. So, we don't really care about queries or keywords anymore. What we care about is topics and context. So when we think about topics and context, and you think about, say, buying mascara, in this instance, you may find some aesthetic value in the package if you just see like a Google shopping result. But I seldom buy something because it looks cool. I buy it because of its value. What is it going to do for me? In this instance, you'd think about the weights and biases that are being used to inform LLM. How are you thinking about your lash goals? How are you thinking about, is this formula waterproof? What shape is the wand? All this information that you might not be including right now. All these decisions that folks may be looking to make based on what you are providing within your product descriptions today, and how we should be thinking about the future of influencing agents. And this brings us to this moment, which is the convergence of search. Long ago, I think it was a bit of a church and state scenario where we would look at organic and paid very much independently. And you see this in how people's careers have gone, right? They've sort of gone in these parallel paths. Yes, we use the same platform, but we don't really speak the same language. So when we think about AI SEO, paid search is still the powerhouse, right? Well, this is where things get interesting. Right now we live in a query to ad model. The future, though, is one where we go from query to answer to ad. And the reason why that's important is that answer calibrates what that ad is going to be. It's going to set the context for it. This is the first time that we should be thinking about influencing our ads through organic search. This is the nature of how this environment is going to evolve. If you're not seeking to influence the answer, then you're going to be limited in your ability to frame your product as the solution, because you want to influence the weights and biases in that response. What should you be considering? What are the most important facts to consider? Whatever your product is best at, right? That's what you want to influence on. So the future of paid search is really grounded by organic. And that separation of church and state, it's eroding. So it's imperative that we lead with that organic presence, driving the influence and sentiment at the same time. Speaking of paid search, that's really complicated. And you might think, oh, this kind of makes sense, but there's still this world where we have to monetize this experience, and we absolutely do. And what's interesting about PMax is I think PMax was Google's Move 37. There's a lot of things about it that you go, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. This is actually quite scary. And it's not just Google, right? It's Meta, it's Amazon. Everyone has their Move 37, which is the PMaxification of the ad buying experience. And it was a fundamental shift, but it can be very, very scary. And I know many of you are very tapped into how PMax works. But essentially, it's a machine learning approach that shows the right ads to the right users at the right time, right? In order to do this, though, they're running these little micro experiments. That's why it's so confusing to operate within this environment, because you go, the performance looks terrible. Like, it does, because it was experimenting. Just like my toddler was experimenting how to walk, and they fell over several times. And if you just heard that Simon let his son fall over 6 times, you'd think he is a terrible parent. That's not true, right? I'm a great parent because I'm letting them fail. I'm letting them learn. So now they will walk faster rather than me trying to correct every single time. It's the same thing with PMax. It's the level of control that we have. And if we think about the future, these levers are only going to continue to diminish. Historically, we used to sit right here, right in the cockpit of the plane. We had all these bells and whistles. We could day part certain things. But there's a degree of hubris here that assumes we know exactly how to tune these machines the most effectively that we can, and critically, that we're only focused on this one plane. Well, we're no longer in the cockpit. Instead, we're in the control tower, which is very helpful because I hear there's a shortage that we can all be part of this. But we are now, we're no longer in the cockpit. We are in the control tower, and so we can't control individual planes, but we have this immense power over the airport, over everything that's happening in that environment. So the best thing that we can do is orient them. How do we orient these planes? How do we give them those feedback mechanisms? Well, there's 2 core vectors: data feedback loops and the creative experience that sits on the front end. Creative experience is particularly important here in terms of the volume that we think about, and critically, how we think about the arrival of something called Search Max. I think they actually may have called it AI Max now since we created this slide. Long thought to have been coming down the pipeline, it is now here. This is keywordless search, just like Google Shopping. You don't have keywords, you don't have queries, you have topics and context. What better way to calibrate topics and context to your ad than to use that AI answer? This is a very, very compelling moment as to how we think about the future of discovery and how we think about the ad-supported nature of this. It is really about topics and themes and not about queries. This is also where we see, I think, the next edge of brand safety. What if you got an ad there and the LLM's like, by the way, don't buy this product, it's not very good. That's a bizarre moment for us. But these LLMs, they want to be real, authentic, confident. That is their primary mission. So they may disagree with your ad. The only way to not have them disagree with your ad is to feed them the information, is to, frankly, have the arguments with them. If there's negative news out there about you, think about how you want to play that story. Think about what opportunity you have to mount a proactive defense in this instance. This is the moment, though, that we've been waiting for. And I do have one more thing, and it's about the future. And that's why today, well, in the words of Doc Brown, where we're going, we don't need SERPs. Because this thing's across the board, right? There's a degree of volatility that we're experiencing right now that is quite hard to wrap our heads around. The nature of how the search experience will operate will change in the future. It may not even be on a search engine. So we have to think about curating for a future that is going to be volatile, that we will have this influence across multiple ecosystems. And that's why today we are excited to be launching the AI SEO practice here at Tenuity. So this is launching in beta for a subset of existing SEO clients today. And it's going to be available to all Tenuity clients in early in the second half of later this year, 2025. This is a practice that we've built from the ground up. And critically, it encompasses a lot of the traditional SEO tactics, but also acknowledges that, frankly, SEO has been this weird black box for a long time. It has been this thing that we've had this, I think, pseudoscience approach to. Just, oh, this thing works, and I saw a blog post that said it works, so we're going to do it. And you're like, but okay, does it work? Is there a waterfall of effect size here? How should we be thinking about the actual science of influencing the LLMs? So if you're able to join us on May 28th, Dalton and I are going to be doing a CMO challenge webinar, where she'll be challenging it from the view of the CMO, and we'll be going deep into how we think about AI SEO, which I'm really excited for. But But just to give you a brief primer on this, there are three key areas that we're thinking about. The first one is how we think about the strategic analysis of topical authority, the way we think about diversified content curation elements, of course, technical interventions and how we think about those, and critically, how we think about the role of video in all of this. Because if you can't infer sarcasm from text, where can you infer it from? Video. Video is the future of how we are thinking about SEO. And critically, all this is grounded by a causal measurement framework. I actually think that SEO got left behind in the incrementality era. Why? Because we only have one universe that we operate in. And you can't do an A/B test because you've only got one inset, one universe. But you can do causal inference. And this is where the science of SEO comes in. This is how we think about actually understanding the cascading waterfall of tactic efficacy. So we'd love to have you join us for this if you're available. And I think we'll be sending something around later on today as well. And I share all this, and I know I started off on this really down note of just like, by the way, the agents are here and they're coming for you. They're coming for all of us. But why I'm excited about the future. And I think, Shingy kind of touched on it earlier today. It's how we think about this moment. It's how we frame this moment. But this is why we're excited. Because I told you about Move 37. And Move 37 was absurd. It was brilliant, though. It was the ultimate coup de grace, and humans just couldn't understand it. But there was another move, actually. Another move that mattered. It was a very interesting move. And that was move 78 in Game 4.
This is the hinge of the game.
Oh, look at that move. That's an exciting move.
No, basically, I
he found the wedge.
Whoa.
It's going to change the equation because now black cannot escape.
That would be so cool if that works.
Ooh. AlphaGo has just played something maybe unusual.
I'm not actually sure what AlphaGo is trying to do here.
What's that about?
I don't really understand it.
Well.
That was a sharp drop in win rate.
That's the sharpest drop in win rate we've seen.
You dropped at 8%. Wow.
This could be that it actually can't find a way through. I think it's looked far enough ahead to see that it doesn't work, and now maybe it's on tilt. I don't know.
There comes.
I
didn't see it.
It's like it's
Yeah, there's a VR
fall off the
rate.
cliff.
So
Yeah, it's made a mistake.
Yeah.
Did anything strange happen in there?
No, it all looked normal.
Well, there you go. Well, we can definitely say, well, there's a weakness. Well, we definitely say it's a mistake.
I felt this mixture of this sinking feeling in my stomach where I was wondering if AlphaGo was becoming delusional in this situation, where I could see that it was starting to play strangely, and at the same time relief for Lucidol that he was actually in with a chance now.
And that is it. That is a wonderful moment. That was this guy, Lee Sedol right here. And that's the smile of someone that just showcased human triumph over what was an alien life form that on paper should have beaten him every single game. This computer was brilliant, right? Should have won all the time. And this was the moment that humans really triumphed over machines. And what was interesting there, and you may have caught it in the full context, essentially AlphaGo committed suicide in that scenario. It realized that I have nowhere to go because it didn't have the agility or the adaptability. And the thing about this is that machines learn, right? That's machine learning. And why this gets me excited is because we don't learn. We experience. So when we think about the future here and we think about how we influence the LLMs, how we influence the future of AI, it really is predicated on this idea of us having this experience, having this agility, having this adaptability to shift the way the world is going to work. And with that, there's a few things I'll leave you with. Oh, I am behind. Oh, no, the slides didn't go. Oh, perfect. I've got. My talk track has shifted. All right, no worries. All good. This is the very anticlimactic ending. The few things that I'll leave you with on the key takeaways. So the first one is that discovery is not constrained. There's no one medium or forum this will take place in. So it doesn't make sense to focus on one medium or forum. We shouldn't just be focused on search or social or commerce. It is across the board. This influence needs to be holistic. And I know that sounds a little complicated to reckon with or maybe a little verbose, but it is one of these moments where I think we're about to experience the renaissance of digital PR. The second is that we should be thinking really critically about this paid and organic convergence. They are not independent entities. They influence each other. And in order to succeed in the future of paid, we absolutely have to think about being able to succeed right now with organic. The future, though, is one that is fragile. So as we think about developing in a fragile ecosystem, again, we don't want too many eggs in one basket. If you ask me right now, AI overview is going to be here forever. I'd say probably not. This is our bridge. That is what is bridging us toward AI mode. And then finally, thinking about macro measurement here, not thinking about rankings and clicks, but thinking about influence and sentiment. And that is how we get to Move 78. So thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.